What if I told you one of the greatest swashbucklers ever made came after the golden age everyone always talks about, and still managed to feel just as grand, romantic, and thrilling as the very best Errol Flynn adventures? What if this movie gave Stuart Granger one of the defining roles of his career, turned a revenge story into a full-scale MGM spectacle, and built a final duel so ambitious that it took weeks of training, dozens of sword passes, and a level of preparation most movies would never even attempt? And stay with me, because one of the biggest surprises has less to do with the costumes and wit than with the way this movie proved the swashbuckler could still feel huge, graceful, and absolutely electric in 1952. These are the top 20 weird facts about Scaramouche. Number 20. This movie came from one of the great swashbuckling novels. Before it was a film, Scaramouche was a 1921 novel by Raphael Sabatini, one of the great suppliers of romantic historical adventure. That matters, because a story like this already comes with a scale built into it. Revenge, politics, theater, swordplay. The French Revolution rumbling in the background. That is not a thin little premise. That is the kind of material that almost demands a big movie treatment. And MGM gave it one. Number 19. MGM did not treat this like a minor costume picture. This was not some little period adventure tossed into theaters and forgotten. Scaramouche was an MGM production directed by George Sidney, produced by Kerry Wilson, written by Ronald Miller and George Frushall, shot by Charles Rocher, and edited by James Newcomb. In other words, MGM loaded this thing up with serious studio muscle, and you can feel that instantly. The movie is rich, decorative, confident. It does not look like a film trying to get by on charm alone. It looks like a studio deciding the swashbuckler still deserves luxury treatment. And once a movie starts there, the casting really matters. Because you need exactly the right man with the sword. Number 18. Stuart Granger did not just star in this movie. He used it to become one of the great swashbuckling stars of his era. Stuart Granger is a huge reason the film works. Scaramouche is widely considered a definitive cinematic swashbuckler, and the movie helped place Granger in the line of major screen swashbucklers after stars like Fairbanks and Flint. That is a big achievement, and the movie earns it. Because Granger does not just wear the costume well, he gives the role wit, danger, speed, and exactly the right amount of swagger. He makes Andre Moreau feel like a born performer, which is perfect because that is exactly what the part requires. And once that performance clicks, the whole movie starts moving with more authority. Number 17. George Sidney gives the movie the scale and sweep of a real MGM event picture. George Sidney was not just pointing cameras at sword fights. He was one of MGM's big directors of spectacle, and that matters because he knew how to stage motion, color, crowds, and emotional sweep on a large studio canvas. That is one reason the movie never feels cramped. It expands, it swells, it knows when to go theatrical and when to go intimate. A lesser director might have made this all plot and costume. Sidney gives it the scale and sweep of a real MGM event picture. And once that event gets moving, the supporting cast helps make it even richer. Number 16. This cast is stacked, and the movie almost looked very different. The film stars Stewart Granger, Eleanor Parker, Janet Leigh, and Mel Ferrer, and that is not decorative casting. Every one of them matters to the movie's shape. And according to the American Film Institute, the casting almost went in a very different direction. Ava Gardner and Elizabeth Taylor were both considered for the female lead during development. The same production history notes that modern sources associate Gardner with Lenore and Taylor with Aileen. That is a great old Hollywood near miss, because it reminds you how different the tone of the movie might have been with another pair of women at the center of it. Instead, the film got Eleanor Parker's theatrical fire and Janet Leigh's aristocratic romantic elegance. And that turns out to be a beautiful balance. That matters because a swashbuckler like this cannot survive on swordplay alone. It needs attraction, conflict, competing loyalties, and social shimmer. And this cast gives it all of that, which is especially important in a story where revenge and romance keep tangling with performance. Because this is not just a man with a blade. It is a man learning how to turn himself into a spectacle. Number 15. The story gets bigger because it blends revenge, theater, and revolution. The film tells the story of a young man in pre-revolutionary France who masquerades as an actor while trying to avenge his friend's murder. That setup is a huge part of why the movie feels so alive. This is not just revenge. It is revenge through performance, through theatricality. That gives the movie a slyness some costume adventures never find. The hero is not simply charging forward. He is learning to play roles, manipulate rooms, and survive inside spectacle itself. And that makes one later detail even more satisfying, because the man at the center of that glamour had to work very hard to make the swordplay convincing. Number 14. Stuart Granger trained hard for this role. Stuart Granger prepared for the film by taking fencing lessons from Jean Hermans, the European champion. That is not casual polishing, that is serious preparation for a movie that knew the swordplay had to carry real weight. And you can feel it. The movie does not look like it is faking confidence with editing alone. It looks like the star actually knows what he is doing. And that becomes even more impressive once you get to the end. Because the finale was not just demanding, it was monumental. Number 13. Granger did most of his own stunts. Granger performed most of his stunts himself. And that matters because it helps explain why the action feels so physically committed. That does not mean there was no movie magic. Of course there was. But it does mean the performance has a different kind of weight. The star is not floating above the danger. He is inside it. And in a swashbuckler, that makes a real difference. Because the audience can feel when the body language belongs to the actor and not just the illusion. Which brings us to the moment the whole movie had been building toward. The duel. Number 12. The final duel was not just famous, it is one of the defining moments of the whole genre. This is the centerpiece. The final duel between Stuart Granger and Mel Ferrer is justly famous, and once you see it, the fame makes sense. It's not just long, it is escalating, it is roaming, it is theatrical. It feels like the movie has suddenly decided the entire theater is now the battlefield. That is one of the reasons it feels so alive. The duel does not just happen in a setting, it takes over the setting, turning a performance space into a combat space and making the whole finale feel bigger, showier, and more dangerous. It is a finale with showmanship, and the really astonishing part is how much labor went into making it look that effortless. Number 11. That duel took 8 weeks of training. This is one of those facts that instantly makes the movie feel bigger. The stars trained for 8 weeks for the climactic duel. 8 weeks for one fight. That tells you everything about the film's priorities. This was not a quick patch job. This was not, we'll fake it in close up. This was a production deciding that the duel had to be worthy of the whole movie. And once a film commits on that level, the details get even better because the choreography was not simple, not even close. Number 10. The stars had to memorize 87 sword passes. Stuart Granger and Mel Ferrer had to memorize 87 individual sword passes for the final duel. That is enormous. It means the fight is not just a blur of movement. It is built, counted, shaped, performed. And that is one reason it still feels so satisfying. It is not just random energy. It is organized excitement. And if that were not enough, the sequence also required a serious number of stunts. Number 9. The duel also required 28 stunts. The same climactic fight involved 28 stunts. Now step back and think about that. 8 weeks of training, 87 sword passes, 28 stunts. That is not a routine finale. That is a studio building a legend on purpose. And when you know those numbers, the sequence becomes even more enjoyable to watch. Because you can feel the craftsmanship behind every escalation. That is the kind of old Hollywood excess people love for a reason. And it is also why Mel Ferrer matters so much. Because you do not get a great duel without a great opponent. Number 8. Mel Ferrer is a huge reason the climax works. Mel Ferrer plays Noel, the Marquis de Mont, and he is essential. He is exactly the kind of enemy the movie needs. Cold, elegant, dangerous, and worth defeating. That matters because a swashbuckler lives or dies on contrast. The hero needs someone who can make Grace feel threatening. And Ferrer does that. He is not just there to lose, he is there to sharpen the hero. That is why the final duel feels earned instead of decorative. And it helps the whole movie feel a little more adult and dangerous than a lighter, breezier costume romp. Number 7. The film opened to rapturous reviews and strong box office. Scaramouche opened at Radio City Music Hall in June 1952 to rapturous reviews and strong box office. That is a terrific piece of history because it means the movie did not just become admired later. It hit immediately. Audiences responded, critics responded. The studio got rewarded. And that kind of response matters when you are making a film that is trying to carry an older genre into a new decade. Because success is what keeps genres alive. And in this case, success did more than validate the movie. It validated the star too. Number 6. This movie helped make Stuart Granger a true swashbuckling star. The success of Scaramouche helped Stuart Granger join the ranks of the major screen swashbucklers. That is not just a compliment, that is a career maker. It means this was not simply a good role in a successful film. It was a genre-defining role. And once a movie can do that, it usually means everything is aligned. The casting, the timing, the material, the spectacle, and in this case, it did, which is why the movie still feels so complete. Number 5. MGM gave the swashbuckler its full luxury treatment. This film looks like MGM. You can feel that studio polish everywhere. The costumes, the sets, the color, the romantic framing, the general confidence of the whole enterprise. This is not a dusty little adventure. It is lush, decorative, confident, built to impress. And that matters because the swashbuckler depends on glamour. It is not just about danger, it is danger made beautiful. And MGM understood that perfectly. Number 4. The movie keeps getting bigger because it never relies on just one thing. One of the best things about Scaramouche is that it does not lean on just one strength. The star works, the villain works, the women work, the color works, the humor works, the politics work, and the duel absolutely works. That is why the film feels bigger than the sum of its parts. A lot of adventure pictures have one unforgettable asset. This one has a whole network of them. And when a movie gets that many things right at once, it starts to feel inevitable, not just successful, definitive. Number 3. This is one of the great post-Flynn swashbucklers. This movie belongs in the continuation of the great swashbuckling tradition after Errol Flynn's peak years, because it is not trying to imitate Robin Hood or Captain Blood beat for beat. It is carrying the tradition forward. And that is part of what makes it feel different from the straight heroic Flynn mold. Scaramouche is a little more theatrical, a little more ironic, and a little more playful about performance itself. And that is why it matters. It proves the swashbuckler did not die with one era. It evolved, it got glossier, it got more theatrical, but it still knew how to throw. That is not a small achievement. Number 2. Scaramouche didn't just succeed. It became one of the definitive screen swashbucklers. Scaramouche is widely considered a definitive cinematic swashbuckler. That is a big statement, and it fits. Because when people remember the genre at its most pleasurable, swordplay, romance, costume spectacle, performance, movement, and a climax that genuinely delivers, this film belongs in the conversation. Not on the fringe, in the center. And that brings us to the final fact. Number 1. This movie lasts because it gives you everything a great swashbuckler is supposed to give you. That is the real secret of Scaramouche. It gives you a star, a villain, a revenge story, a theatrical disguise, romantic confusion, political danger, luxurious MGM spectacle, and one of the greatest final duels old Hollywood ever staged. And because all of those things locked together, the movie lasted. Not just as a hit, not just as a curiosity, as a standard. A reminder that the swashbuckler, at its best, is one of the most exhilarating forms classic Hollywood ever made. And that is what makes Scaramouche such a fascinating movie. It is romantic, it is theatrical, it is political, it is funny, it is thrilling, and it contains one of the great sword fights in film history. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which swashbuckler I should cover next. And after this one, be sure to watch The Adventures of Robin Hood, because if Scaramouche shows you how glorious a swashbuckler could still be in the 1950s, Robin Hood shows you one of the brightest, happiest, and most iconic peaks the genre ever reached.